Dusk Till Dawn is here. Pre-release is in full effect, and the sales data is, well, it's not what you might expect. Let's take a look at every single sold listing of sealed product for the latest Flesh and Blood release on TCGplayer. When it comes to evaluating a Flesh and Blood release, I think there are multiple factors that we must take into account. And while sealed product sales data from TCGplayer is awesome and we can learn a lot of it, it's not the whole picture. But some things we can learn from this information is how the community is feeling as a whole when you compare it to how it's feeling about other sets. So today we're going to look at every single sold listing on TCGplayer for Flesh and Blood's latest release, Dusk Till Dawn. It is in pre-release as of the time of recording this video, and we're going to talk about some things this set got wrong and some things I think this set really got right, and what I expect this set to do as far as performance in the future. But without further ado, let's take a look at all of that juicy sales data. What I have here is a visual representation of those numbers, and before I go too far, I want to offer a word of caution. This is not meant to be this is the number of Flesh and Blood boxes sold of this set across the entire ecosystem. This is also not this is how big the print run is video, because I think there are some numbers and formulas we can use to try to get to the bottom of that, and if you want stuff like that, make sure you're subscribed. I will be performing that exercise and opening up to the community later. What this is, however, is a representation of how people are purchasing this product on the popular marketplace TCGplayer, and instead of comparing it to other imaginary numbers or things we don't know, I like to compare it to other recent Flesh and Blood sets that I have tracked the same data for. So I want to start at the beginning with the totals, what has sold so far. And as you see in the upper left hand corner here, we've sold roughly 800 boxes of Dusk Till Dawn on the popular online marketplace TCGplayer. That's come to a total community spend of roughly $70,696. Not roughly, it's exactly that much, and an average box price of $89.60. Now, when compared to other releases in recent Flesh and Blood history, Dynasty and Outsiders, this compares rather favorably. As far as Outsiders goes, it blows it out of the water, and for Dynasty, it is pacing slightly ahead. And for a supplemental set, I think this is massive. We know supplemental sets in Flesh and Blood have had we'll call it a rocky history, and to see this one doing well in the early stages is fantastic. There's a reason, I think, for that, and we'll talk about that later in this video, but let's get through the numbers for nerds, and we'll talk about the fun stuff. We see here with the pie chart on top, we see our community spend breakdown. This is how regular enthusiasts, how people looking to buy Flesh and Blood like you and I are spending their hard-earned money on TCGplayer, and we see a theme in the Flesh and Blood world seem to continue. When we go to buy Flesh and Blood products, we clearly prefer the case to the single booster box. This is something I have said ad nauseum on this channel in the limited number of videos that I have made so far. It seems like the single one-off Flesh and Blood booster box can feel very risky. If you're a casual enthusiast looking to buy a single box, take it home, crack these packs, often you'll be left with a pile of $1 to $2 Majestics, hopefully one good hit, and not really sure what else to do with yourself. But if you buy the case, however, it does seem that the hits come a little more consistently by the caseload, and it seems like whether that remains true or is false at this point, the community still leans into this. And I think it's interesting to note that when it comes to single box versus case spend breakdown and number of boxes shipped out, the money matches the number of boxes. This means that when we buy a case or when we buy a single box, neither is getting us a discount or a price increase on the other. We're spending roughly the same amount on each that or the other. I think that's really interesting that we don't see a case premium here, but again, I think it's because we want the case. It seems like something we covet. Now, when it comes to Dusk Till Dawn pre-sale information, I think there's a lot of risk here when it comes to the single booster box, but I do think Dusk Till Dawn shades in a more positive direction than, let's say, Outsiders. And this is mainly because of the Marvel design in this and some other sets that I really enjoyed. When it comes to the single booster box and the Marvel design, the idea that people are going to continue purchasing cases well past release is not really something. This is where you need, in my opinion, the single box to really get the job done. And Uprising, again, also in my opinion, was the best box opening experience from a Flesh and Blood standpoint for the single box. It felt like an uprising. You could get various marvels of different rarities and cold foil tokens, and opening a single box was often an adventure sparked with a ton of fun. And then they took the Marvel card design and seemed to go in the other direction. They seemed to make Marvels more chase, more rare, and harder to get. And because of this, it then might have raised the ceiling, but it also seemed to devalue the single box. Well, with cold foil figments and the nostalgic pull towards the light and dark, the light and the shadow, we might have another uprising situation on our hands. Based on the pull rates that we're seeing online, the Marvel figments could be a little more common and a little more readily available as far as the regular community is concerned. And because of this, there's an opportunity for the single box of Dusk Till Dawn to do really, really well in the long term. We'll have to stick around and wait for those pull rates. And if you know those pull rates already off the top of your head, let me know in the comments section below. But the last thing I want to talk about is, what does this set have going for it? If we compare this to Dynasty, another supplemental set, and even looking back as far as Everfest, a supplemental set that at the time of its release, everyone was super stoked for, what does this have going for it? Well, it kind of breaks the mold of the supplemental set. Instead of having a little bit for everybody and a small pool of cards that supports every single hero, this definitely leans more into support for a couple heroes that went through a rocky road, either weren't good enough or living legend out already, and tries to support and bring those back to prominence or back to light, if you will. That's right, I went there. This set, instead of a supplemental set, for me feels more like an expansion of the light and dark theme, where we get Vynsett, a replacement to Chain. We get a new Prism where we can play all of our old Prism cards and some of our new. And yes, we finally look to fix Levia. Now, the fact that we fix Levia's mechanic, which was broken, with a legendary that you pretty much need to play her, I am not the biggest fan of. I will be completely honest with you. There'll be a separate video about this whole topic on this channel. We won't get into that right now. But instead of feeling like a regular supplemental set, it does feel like support for that. And because of this, it's got the first nostalgic pull that we've really felt in the Flesh and Blood community, right? We are being pulled back to a time of Monarch, and while the Monarch set itself was rocky, and the print runs, it was printed to the moon, and there's expensive boxes, there was a lot of good that happened. We went out and we played card games. Again, we got out of our houses, we experienced community again through that set, and I think because of that, there's a lot of fond memories, regardless of other things that may have happened, and I really do think that gives this a chance to perform really well. Now, Sorcery is right here. Flesh and Blood is coming out right before Lorcana. All of these things are happening, and listen, Magic is killing it. So how will this set do in the long term? It is, we will track the information. If you like stuff like this, if you like fun conversations, make sure you're subscribed. If you could share this video on wherever you like to engage in Flesh and Blood conversations, because I think this information is extremely fun to talk about. I think it helps us understand how we're spending our money, and listen, I like conversations like this. I truly think they're fun. Until next time, you guys know my name is Josh. Thank you so much for hanging out today. We will see you around, and probably a couple more times this week. I got some boxes to open. Shh, don't tell anybody. See ya. Bye.